Welcome to the Fantasy Flex Podcast presented by Prize Picks. I'm your host, Chris Raybon, here with my guy, Sean Kerner. And today is our weekly prop episode, debut of a new format for us this week, Sean. I'm excited.
Yeah, I love it. And, they have props out, looks like Monday morning. So I'm excited to be able to dive into props earlier in the week and then, give you our best bets on Fridays, and pumped for this.
Yeah, damn. Now, not even any sleep on Sunday nights. I used to
Never
knock out and go into a little hibernation on Sunday nights because I would be so dead. I would usually stay up all night Saturday, but now I feel like it's just going to be, it's going to be crazy with props out on a Monday. So I'm looking forward to it, though. Shouts to Prize Picks,
yes,
our sponsors. And let's get right into it. The format of the show, coming out with this episode every Friday. And the purpose is to just highlight a bunch of our favorite prop bets, player prop bets for the weekend. And we'll use Prize Picks lines. Obviously, lines move. So we'll talk about, the number we bet it down to and all that good stuff. We'll do one quarterback prop, two running back props, two receiving props each every week. So that's 10 props for you guys. And we'll give you some best bets at the end as well. So Sean, start us off. Who's your quarterback prop for week one of the 2021 NFL season?
All right. Of course, I'm going to kick it off with a Jalen Hurts prop. I'm going over 40.5 rushing yards against the Falcons. I'm projecting this closer to 46. This is a great matchup for him to kick off the season. New defensive coordinator Dean Pease loves the blitz, and Jalen Hurts absolutely torched teams when they tried to blitz him last year, albeit a small sample size. So I think if anything, it's going to force him to roll out, scramble, rack up these rushing yards. And in his 4 starts last year, he rushed for 106 yards, 63 yards, 59 yards, and then 34 yards. So even the one under he hit, he was almost at this number. So I think he has a very high floor when it comes to rushing yards. That's why I love this over. I would pick this probably up to 44.5. So there is a little bit of room here. When it comes to rushing yards, every yard is valuable. So that's why I think just the 5 yards of value that I'm showing here is super valuable. So I love this pick.
Yeah, I think that that's a good call there. Jalen Hurts, the Eagles, little tease for our Action Network Fantasy podcast, which you can go check out. Of course, it's with Stuckey and I. The Eagles were one of my 6-pack picks and Stuckey's moneyline underdog pick. So a lot of love for the Eagles this week. And I think Jalen Hurts has a big game. So like that one there. For my quarterback prop, I'm going with Teddy Bridgewater under 247.5 passing yards on Prize Picks. And I have this around 240, but I think the floor is even lower than that. And the reason being is this Giants team, they were a big under team last year, 3-13 toward the over. So I don't expect their offense, the Giants offense, to do much. And therefore, I don't expect Bridgewater to have to do much through the air. You also have this Giants defense, one of the best scheme defenses in the league with Patrick Graham. Remember, they held Russell Wilson in check last year. They're just one of the better defenses in this league. And I just don't think the Broncos in week one, the game plan is going to be to throw the ball around the yard. And I don't think it's going to be one of those situations because passing yards, it's not always just a quarterback skill. A lot of times it just comes down to game script. And I just don't see the game script here being one that the Broncos have to throw it around. The Giants last year, they allowed on average about 250 some yards, but they were under this number in 9 of 16 games on defense. And then Broncos last year, they averaged only 244 yards passing per game in non-Kendall Hinton games. So that's already under this number, and median for quarterbacks is still usually a little bit lower than the average even. So I like this prop. I think that I would bet it down to 240.5 for Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm projecting this closer to 238. But like you said, even if you like the potential game script or other variables that might not be indicated in the number, it gives you even more reason to take a prop. So yeah, I only have, about 7 yard difference here, but I'm with you on kind of this game flow really being favoring the under here.
Yep. And for quarterbacks, we've kind of talked about it off air, but passing yards, you're never going to get like, I think, a screaming value
Yeah.
because, 7 yards, for example, which it sounds like both of us are kind of below that's like a whole pass attempt, which is pretty valuable in, anytime you can get a pass attempt or more of value on a prop that you're differing from, it's pretty good value. So yeah, Bridgewater under, you got the Hurts over. Let's go to your first running back prop.
So I'm going with Antonio Gibson over 57.5 rushing yards. They're at home against the Chargers. I know you and I both love taking Washington here as pretty much a pick 'em. So I think this could be a positive game script for Gibson. And we have to remember last season, he was still learning the position. He's a converted wide receiver, and he still managed to look pretty polished as a running back last season. But this season, he's put in a ton of work, and even the coaching staff has said it's a night and day difference. I mean, he looks like a legit running back. So I'm really excited about Gibson this year. I'm bullish on him. That's why I think out of the gate, I want to be attacking his over on his rushing props. So that's why I think 57.5 is a bit too low. I'm projecting this closer to 65.5. I would take this probably up to 62.5, but I think we want to buy in on Gibson early in the season.
Yeah, I have it right around the same. I have the average, the mean projection at 71 and the median right about 66. So I'm right in line with that projection. I think it's a couple attempts too low there for Antonio Gibson. And for me, my first rushing prop, I'm going to stay in the same game and go with Austin Eckler under 51.5 rushing yards. And we know Eckler is a little bit banged up with his hamstring injury. I think he'll play. Hamstring injury shouldn't have a huge effect, but this is a tough Washington front seven. This is a situation where I think the Chargers are a little bit overrated in the market. So we may be underrating how much they'll have to pass in this game. And I just don't know Eckler sees enough work, especially after not practicing and being a little banged up against the tough defense to get over this number. So I have Eckler closer to 40 yards. So I'm about a couple of attempts under this number. So I would take it down to about 42.5. I think Eckler is a guy who we want to be careful with, especially in the run game, because you do have all those other backs for the Chargers, and Eckler could be where Eckler could kind of see his main role be in the receiving game if he's even a little banged up. So I think there's a lot of outs here for this under. So yep. Austin Eckler under 51.5 at Prize Picks.
Yeah, I locked this one in when it was 57.5, and that was before we even knew he was dealing with this injury. So, I love it even more now. And like you said, the floor on him is super low. 40 is a pretty low projection. So I think that they're going to need him in the passing game anyway. So they might just use a little bit more Justin Jackson, Joshua Kelly to kind of eat into those carries just to keep Eckler fresh. So yeah, I love this under as well.
All right, who we got for the second running back prop?
My second prop is Philip Lindsay under 39.5 rushing yards. I like taking advantage of this Houston Texans dumpster fire of a running back situation. It's not that like any of the running backs are bad. If anything, they have too good of a running back depth chart for such a bad team. So right now, Philip Lindsay is the starting running back for the Texans week 1, but you still have David Johnson there. You have Mark Ingram, even Rex Burkhead might chip in a carry or two. So in a situation like this, I think the floor on every player is lower than people realize. So I like taking, the highest prop on the board, which is Lindsay here. He could lead the team with carries, but that might even be just 8 or 9 touches. And whenever you have a bad team that has a 3-way running back committee, you want to take the under. So that's why I'm going the under here. I'm projecting this closer to 32.5. So I would probably take it down to 35.5. Either way, he just has a really low floor heading into week 1.
It almost seems like a bet on will Lindsay get to double-digit touches or double-digit carries.
Mm-hmm.
If he gets under that, I think you have a pretty good chance of going under. I have no idea how this Houston backfield is going to shape up, but I have Lindsay at 8.8 carries. So he's under 40 yards for me as well. So yeah, I'm in line there. Let's go to my second running back prop, and it's Jonathan Taylor, under 81.5 rushing yards. I think the median should be closer to 70. Obviously, Taylor is a talented back. He should see a decent amount of work with Carson Wentz still making his way back. Didn't practice much. The O-line didn't practice much. The receivers, T.Y.'s out. So I think they are going to lean on a run game. But Seattle was number 7 in run defense DVOA a year ago. And this Colts team, I don't know if they're going to be able, with Seattle kind of knowing what's coming, I don't know if they're going to be able to get a lot of run lanes in week 1 here. Seattle's a very good run defense, and they're going to, I'm pretty sure the defensive scheme is going to be, okay, let's sit on the run. They usually play that single high safety, so they'll have another guy at the line of scrimmage. And I think that the efficiency just won't be there for such a high number in week 1 for Jonathan Taylor. So going under 81.5 rushing yards at prize pick for Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, you snaked me on this one, so I'm definitely in line with you. I'm projecting this at 70. I mean, Jonathan Taylor is going to have a good game. He's still a mid-range to low-end RB1 in fantasy. It just, this number is just a bit too high. So, I think his median is going to be, closer to 70. So love the value here on the under as well.
All right, let's go to your first receiving prop for week 1.
So I'm going with Juwan Johnson, baby, under 30.5 receiving yards. I was saying he was a sneaky flyer in DFS if Adam Troutman were to miss this week. Juwan Johnson's a former receiver, converted tight end. The Saints really don't have anybody at tight end outside of Troutman. So I thought he was going to step in and see a few targets. But now that Troutman, it looks like he's basically probable and good to go. So I think that, Juwan Johnson at best is going to split time with Adam Troutman. I just don't see how he clears this number with a healthy Troutman in the mix. So I'm projecting this closer to 20 yards actually. And I would take this down to, I would say 24, 25.5 yards. Again, we have to monitor Troutman just in case, but it seems like it's all systems go. And again, this is a projection I think should have dropped 10 to 15 yards after that news. So I love this under.
Yeah, I think at best, if Troutman plays, I think you can't say Juwan Johnson's median catches is any higher than 2. And right. So you're essentially saying you give him 11 yards per catch, which is, in line for a tight end. Then, yeah, I think anything above 22, I would feel comfortable with. So like that one. But again, yeah, keep your eye on the injury news and keep your eye on the lines. Remember, these lines do move. So for my first receiving prop, I'm going with an over. Let's mix in some overs. I'm not going to just go straight unders. So I actually went all unders on our season-long pod where we went through all the props. But I'm going to go with an over here in Keenan Allen, over 60.5 receiving yards. And this is a number where Keenan Allen went over this in 7 of 12 games where he played over half the snaps. Remember, he had a couple of weird games where he got hurt or he was, just banged up. And so I think this number is too low for, I know we're a little bit down on Herbert, but I think Keenan Allen, when he's healthy, it's not like he's running, these deep routes that are going to be hard to connect for a number 1 wide receiver against a tough defense. So I'd feel comfortable with this one up to about 64. I like Keenan Allen over 60.5. Again, he went over this a pretty good amount in his healthy games last year.
Yeah, I think Allen's always a good overplay because he has such a high floor. So if you ever see a good number for Keenan Allen, I'm comfortable taking overs with him. My wide receiver prop is kind of competing with Keenan a bit because I'm taking the over 37.5 receiving yards for Mike Williams. Because I'm projecting this closer to 50 actually. So I have quite a bit of a delta between my projection and this number. And Mike Williams, he's typically a high ceiling, low floor wide receiver, very inconsistent. Normally I wouldn't touch his overs, but new offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi has said he intends to use Mike Williams as the X receiver, the Mike Thomas role in this Sean Payton inspired offense. What?
Michael Thomas. Mike Thomas is the guy in Cincinnati that
Michael
plays
the Mike
behind
Thomas from
on
the
tape.
Yeah, sorry, I feel like I know him. But yeah, Michael Thomas. And we saw offensive coordinator Joe Brady do that with Robbie Anderson last year, and he became a much more consistent receiver as a result. Now, I don't really know how this is going to work because they already have Keenan Allen to be that sort of underneath weapon. But either way, I'm trusting the offensive coordinator language here. And I think Mike Williams has a higher floor this week. If Austin Eckler happens to miss the game, I think, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams might pick up an extra target or two. So I'm comfortable taking the over here at 37.5, and I'd probably take it up to 45.5. So yeah, I think that Mike Williams is a guy that I think we'll be able to trust to be a little bit more consistent week to week this year.
Yeah, it's interesting because I know earlier in the week we both liked the Justin Herbert under, but that's why you have to kind of watch these line moves, because as books adjust, I think sometimes they over adjust. So that Herbert number I think went down about 15 yards, and I think that's affecting the props for some of the receivers, to where now we jumped on the Herbert prop under earlier in the week, and now we're sitting here taking Chargers receivers overs because the number has dropped too far. So this is kind of, the edges are very small here, and you have to kind of jump on these numbers as quick as possible because they will move. But sometimes you get a great situation where there's an over adjustment, and it's almost like we have a middle here. We're kind of hedged out on both sides. So
and that's a great point, because both players, if you add these yardage totals up, it's about 98 yards. So there's an extra 162 yards to go around. And if Austin Eckler is, injured, or, he's limited in any way, that's more yardage for Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. And then we know that the wide receiver 3 slot on the Chargers is usually a low volume role. Jared Cook is going to be a guy that's inconsistent. So it is interesting to kind of like the overs on both of these guys and the under on Herbert, because like you said, it's such a fine line, and we're just talking about like small edges here. But it's a good point, because I do remember kind of saying I was all over the Herbert under 271, but again, it's all about these numbers, and I think that there's still some value on these overs.
Just gotta hope Jalen Guyton doesn't go 2 catches.
Or no, Josh Palmer. Yards. I mean, I'm a big Josh Palmer believer, but it might take him a couple games to really hit the ground. So yeah, if anything, it'd be Josh Palmer screwing all this up for me this week.
So you think Palmer's definitely? I mean, we're getting off track here, but you think Guyton's out of the rotation week 1?
No, well, not week 1. I think that by week 9, Guyton is absolutely out of the rotation. It's going to be Josh Palmer getting 70 to 80% of the routes run. But week 1, that's kind of the fun about week 1. We don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if they sort of split work, but by the end of the season, absolutely, Josh Palmer will overtake Guyton.
We need Prize Picks to throw up some routes props, just over on the number of routes run in the game. Yeah. That would be fun. All right. Let's close it off with another over for me. I saw this number and I kind of chuckled because I get it, but it's just way too low for this player. And that's Julio Jones. I'm going over 55.5 receiving yards at Prize Picks. First of all, the Arizona Cardinals don't have cornerbacks right now. Like this could be a real issue for them. Malcolm Butler retired. Their cornerback depth chart is just really thin. And also, I don't think they've practiced with the rotation that they're going to end up using as much as they would have liked. So Julio Jones went over this number in 6 of 9 games last year. And I think this is in week 1 in a high total game. I think you're going to see him go over this again. I'm not worried about his health. I think he'll be fine. Him and A.J. Brown should be the leading receivers for Tennessee by a mile, and they should be just as big a part of the game plan as a guy like Derrick Henry, because, again, you're going to look at this Cardinal team, and you're going to look at where the weakness is on defense, and it's going to be on that perimeter at that cornerback position. And on the other side of the ball, Arizona's expected to keep pace with Tennessee. Again, the total is 52 in the game, so it should be a close, high-scoring game. So I think Tennessee's going to have to throw it more than they normally would. So love Julio Jones over 55.5. I would take this up to about 64.5 as well.
Yeah, you stole this one for me as well. This is a smash spot for Julio. He's not even on the injury report this week. So he's apparently 100%. That's pretty rare. So you're going to get prime Julio in week 1. Like you said, nobody's going to be able to stop him on the Arizona side of the football. So yeah, I love this over as well.
What is Julio is my wide receiver 11 this week. Like this
Yeah,
is
that
yeah.
I was gonna say the same thing. Like he opened up as my wide receiver 9. And I was like, okay. And then I think he's down to like wide receiver 11 now.
Yeah,
But yeah, like this is the week. Oh, he's wide receiver 10.
there you go.
And he was only wide receiver 19 in my season long projections because out of all receivers, I do dock like a half game for him in games played. But I said when he's active, healthy, and playing, I mean, he's still a top 10 receiver. So that's why I love, attacking these week 1 player props because we're getting value on taking a Julio Jones over. I mean, how fun is that?
Right. And I mean, I know sometimes you have those receivers go to new teams and it's not always seamless transition, but this is like tailor made for the Titans to show off their new, how brilliant their front office is for, sending away the offensive coordinator, but getting like his best receiver on his new team in return. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's essentially the trade they made. They're like, all right, Arthur Smith, you can go. We'll take Julio.
Exactly.
All right. So to recap, Sean going Jalen Hurts over 40.5 rushing yards, Antonio Gibson over 57.5 rushing yards, Philip Lindsay under 39.5 rushing yards, Juwan Johnson under 30.5 receiving yards, and Mike Williams over 37.5 receiving yards. I am going with Teddy Bridgewater under 247.5 passing yards, Austin Eckler under 51.5 rushing yards, Jonathan Taylor under 81.5 rushing yards, Keenan Allen over 60.5 receiving yards, and Julio Jones over 55.5 receiving yards. Next up here on the Fantasy Flex is a segment we call Elite Entries, where Sean and I dive into the Prize Picks app and compare our player projections to the props to build some entries. For listeners unfamiliar with Prize Picks, it's a super simple way to play DFS. Prize Picks offers a bunch of fantasy prop over-under markets for both daily and season long, such as Zeke Elliott rushing yards this season or Josh Allen's week 1 fantasy score. You choose the picks you like, you build your entry, and you can go at 2, 3, 4, or even 5 picks, and your payout is based on how many picks you went with and how much you risk. So if you build an entry with 2 props, you can win 3x your entry fee. If you build one with 4, you can win as much as 10x your entry fee. Sean and I are going to use our projections and identify markets we like. And for this show, we'll just go with our best bets out of our top 10 props. So Sean, start us off. Who's your number 1 best bet for week 1 of 2021?
I think the number 1 best bet is Juwan Johnson to go under this 30.5 receiving yards. Like I said, I mean, Adam Troutman is healthy. So I lowered his projection down closer to 17-20 receiving yards. So I'd actually pick this down to about 23-24 receiving yards.
For my number 1 best bet on Prize Picks, I'm going Austin Eckler under 51.5 rushing yards. He's a little bit banged up. There's a tough Washington front 7. And I think Eckler is going to do most of his damage in the receiving game. So I would bet this to about 40 rushing yards for Eckler in week 1. Sean, who's your second best bet on Prize Picks for our elite entry in week 1?
So my second best bet has to be this Jalen Hurts over 40.5 rushing yards. I think this is a pretty safe bet. He's the kind of guy that has a really high floor when it comes to his scrambling ability. The Falcons could blitz him a ton, forcing him out of the pocket. And we saw the one game that he went under last year, he barely went under this number at 34, whereas the other 3 games, he flew over this number. So I'm projecting this closer to about 46, 47 rushing yards. I would take this up to 44.5, but I think he has a really, really high floor. And I love the over 40.5 rushing yards.
Yeah, I like Jalen Hurts over as well. And I think the one thing people are forgetting when they quote some of his stats from a year ago is that he got benched in that final start against Washington, which is a really tough defense. And so you can't necessarily knock him for, that average stat line over those 4 games, because it's really 3.5 starts for Jalen Hurts. So love it. For my best bet number 2 for our Prize Picks elite entry, I am going with Julio Jones over 55.5 receiving yards. Again, he cleared 84 in 6 of 9 games last year. Just a number that's way too low if Julio's healthy. And by the way, the Cardinals are reeling at the cornerback position. So Julio Jones over 55.5 receiving yards. To recap, our prize picks, elite entry for week 1. Sean has Jalen Hurts over 40.5 rushing yards, Juwan Johnson under 30.5 receiving yards, and I have Austin Eckler under 51.5 rushing yards, and Julio Jones over 55.5 receiving yards. As a reminder, prize picks markets do move, so you'll want to be nimble and lock in the best numbers as quick as possible. If you have not created a prize picks account yet, check out the link in our episode description and they'll match your first deposit up to $100, or visit prizepicks.com and use the promo code ACTION10. That's ACTION10 at prizepicks.com. All right, so that does it for our weekly props episode on the Fantasy Flex feed. As a reminder, we moved to an all-new feed so we can give you guys 5 episodes per week all season long. So if you could do us a favor, please subscribe to the new feed. It's Fantasy Flex. Just search it wherever you get your podcast. And leave us a rating and a review, too. That would really help us out. Tell us what you like, what you don't like about the show. And we'll keep the heat coming for you guys. You can find Sean on Twitter at @the_oddsmaker. You can find me on Twitter at Chris Raybon, and you can find us both in the award-winning Action Network app at those same handles, where you can follow our bets or track your own, get live odds, all that good stuff. Don't forget to check out actionnetwork.com and fantasylabs.com for all of our fantasy football, DFS, and betting content. Until next week, let's get this money.